Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. You have been watching a CBS News special report. Just a short time ago, as you just saw, President Trump declared a national emergency, and by doing so, he created the ability for himself and only himself to regulate and impose tariffs across the board on lots of different countries. He also announced, as part of that tariff structure, a baseline tariff of 10% on all trading partners with the United States, with specific reciprocal tariffs on what he calls the worst offending nations. Now, the White House said that could impact as many as 60 countries in that worst trading partner category. The first round of tariffs, the president said, will go into effect starting April 5th. Now, we're still sifting through a lot of the details at this hour, but here's what we do know. This move will impact friends and foes alike and will very likely change what you pay for everyday items. Despite that, the president's message was, to put it mildly, hopeful and patriotic.
American steel workers, auto workers, farmers, and skilled craftsmen, we have a lot of them here with us today. They really suffered gravely. They watched in anguish as foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream.
I want to bring in Weijia Jiang at the White House. Weijia, this is a day that has been building. There's been anticipation in global markets for weeks. Now it's here. What do we know?
Well, it's not an accident, Major, that this has been building and that all the details were shrouded in mystery until the president could come out into the storied Rose Garden and make it really a show, because we know that is what the president values, especially when it comes to issues that he feels are critical to his agenda. And so, Major, we expected these reciprocal tariffs, but we got more details about how the White House is defining them and who they will impact. And so we know there's about 60 countries that the White House is calling the, quote, worst offenders, they say, that have the worst trade barriers, that have tariffs on American exports, that have currency manipulation. So those countries, which, by the way, include the U.S.'s biggest trading partners, are going to be face a 50% tariff on what the U.S. has calculated that they charge the U.S. So, as an example, they say China's tariffs on the U.S. is 67% total, so there will be now a 34% tariff on all Chinese imports. There's also that baseline of 10% for all other countries, Major. And as you mentioned, the president is saying that this is a national emergency. Technically, he had to declare one so that he could regulate imports, but also his language really tried to underscore that. He said that, the U.S. has been looted and pillaged and raped and plundered by other nations, and it is time to stop. So buried in all of this is the message, Major, that he believes that there must be pain for big gain. But the question is, that we don't know exactly, is how much pain and for how long? Because even though his theory is that, American companies are not going to want to pay all these extra fees, these tariffs on imports, so we're just going to buy American, we're just going to produce American and build American. How long is that going to take? These are all unknowns. And at the end of the day, that is what the consumer wants to know, because they want to know, when you're talking about this pain in the meantime, what does it mean for me? And we just don't know that yet, Major.
And Weijia, I want to ask you about some other things going on at the White House today. Not only was this an enormous day for tariffs and the announcement therein, but Mark Zuckerberg was at the White House today. There was conversation about the durability of Elon Musk still being a top advisor to the president, and conversations going on about the future of TikTok and lots of companies weighing in on that. I'm not asking you to cover all of that ground, just as much of it as you can.
Well, starting with Mark Zuckerberg, he has quickly become a friend to this administration and to President Trump, going multiple times to Mar-a-Lago. And so he is in close conversations with not just Trump, but his advisors here, as they try to see how big tech now can shape the policies, especially with regard to things like artificial intelligence, as the president works on those. But you're right in that mentioning Elon Musk because he is a big tech leader who has penetrated beyond a Zuckerberg figure who is having conversations. He is, of course, one of President Trump's closest advisors. And we know that recently he has publicly said that his time is coming to an end, which the White House does not deny. Of course, he has made quite a big mark with his DOGE efforts to dismantle the federal government. We don't know the exact date of when he will sever himself from working in the administration. As for TikTok, you're right. It is very important for President Trump now, even though before he called for a ban of TikTok, to broker some kind of a deal. And many companies want in on that deal. Most notably today, Amazon now throwing its hat in the ring to see if it can take over a portion of TikTok that is under scrutiny because of national security concerns. But we know that his advisors presented several different options for the president to weigh. We don't know who the frontrunner is, and we don't know when he will make a decision, when this deal could actually be consummated. But he has said, Major, that it's important to him to make sure TikTok stays in the country because, frankly, he says it helped him win the election.
Lots of questions, batting 1,000 as always. Weijia Jiang at the White House. Thank you very much. I want to bring in Ling Kent because we promised you that we will be sifting through the details, and there's nobody better at the table to help me do that than Ling. So how do you sift the details? What stands out most for you from this announcement about the specificity of the tariffs?
The numbers are really interesting. If you take a look at all of the pages of those tariffs that will be levied, many of the major countries, Trump says, are getting half of a reciprocal tariff. For example, that China number of 34%, Vietnam 46%. But then you also, if you look through the entire list, some smaller countries are actually are going to be experiencing an entirely reciprocal tariff, a 10% tariff that they're levying on us, and vice versa. So it is not all countries are being treated equally. So it'll be interesting to see how some of those smaller nations react. I'm also looking, of course, at the markets. It's important to point out that NASDAQ futures are now down 2.5%. You see the S&P 500, that broader index of stocks held by so many people in their 401ks, that is down 1.6% right now in after-hours trading.
That's after-hours trading, right? That's anticipating the markets opening tomorrow.
Yes, but it's a nice snapshot as to how the markets might be feeling about all these new details that are coming out.
And also, I understand as I read this briefing that the White House did before the announcement, that there are some exemptions under Section 232. Right. And that there are some exceptions also for Canada and Mexico because of USMCA. So there are some places where there's a little bit of give in the tariff application.
It is not being applied equally. However, in his remarks, he did say, the president said, baseline 10% tariffs that go into effect essentially right away. And so there's a little bit of lack of clarity on that front. And as we saw with the auto tariffs, the initial announcement was April 2nd. It then shifted to April 3rd. So there might be some moving pieces here. But Trump really placing a big premium on bringing workers back. He promises it will happen very soon. You saw one auto worker there who came up on the stage to speak, also anticipating it would happen within 6 months to a year. But look, the reality of the situation is those deals take a lot of time, not to mention building and investing and bringing workers back takes a lot of time. But I've been in touch today with UAW President Shawn Fain. He says he likes these tariffs. He's still going through these new set of tariffs. But essentially, he believes that with this pressure, using these tariffs as a tool, essentially, they'll be able to restart, potentially, production in Warren, Michigan of the Ram 1500, or perhaps the Volkswagens down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, add back a shift, in his words. And so this is where some workers are hoping for some promise, is a reinvigoration of jobs. Whether or not that actually saves consumers money in the long run and fulfills President Trump's promises from the campaign trail, well, that's a whole nother matter. And according to the economists we've been speaking to, the idea here is that the prices will actually go up.
Yeah, retail prices go up for clothing, shoes, and then probably also at supermarket, because we have a tremendous number of agriculture imports that are going to have to pass through these costs some way or the other.
One of the largest food trade associations is worried about what happens to elements of the food that we're eating at our kitchen table every day, right? We're talking about spices, cocoa, things like that that go into so many food products here in the United States. But looking ahead, we already have seen over the past 5 years, inflation really hit those monthly expenses, right? Not just groceries like you're talking about, but I'm saying auto insurance, car repairs, all of that stuff is likely to get even more expensive with the application of these tariffs. And so with people already expressing shakier consumer confidence, shakier consumer sentiment, that only adds additional stress on pocketbooks that, frankly, so many people, they're already stretched out.
And the administration,
and that's where the stress comes from.
in its own words, talks about a transition phase, a detox. We'll see what that transition phase or that detox looks like, feels like, and what the price is out at. Joe Ling
likely to be expensive.
Thank you very much.